Welcome to the Education Corner, a podcast by Education Choices magazine.
Education Corner podcast are thrilled to welcome Ms. Cathy Ellott, head of Streatham and Clapham High School, to talk about her career so far and how she has been impacted by her experience as a mother with a child who also had ADHD and dyslexia. Streatham and Clapham High School is one of the UK's leading private girls' schools. It takes students from nursery through to sixth form. The school is part of the Girls' Day School Trust, which is an organisation for pioneering girls' education and has been in existence since 1872. Streatham and Clapham emphasise the community and equality in education throughout their school. We're thrilled to have you with us, Cathy. We understand that you started your new position as head of Streatham and Clapham High School in September 2023. Would you like to tell us a bit about yourself and your career prior to joining in your current position? And also, we're always interested to learn about how your previous role as Senior Deputy Head at St Mary's Ascot is going to support the work that you're now doing.
Well, thank you so much for welcoming me today. It's been great to be part of this. I have only been ahead since September of last year, so I'm halfway through my first academic year, but it feels like so much has happened. And it was a big change coming back in January and realising that I wasn't new anymore, and that was a real relief. Because actually, the thing about St Mary's, where I was before for 7 years, was that I saw a whole generation of girls through from year 7 to upper 6th. And in that time, I was pastoral deputy for 3 years and then senior deputy for 4 years. And I really felt like I was part of the furniture. I felt like the girls and the parents and my colleagues trusted me. I didn't always get everything right, no one does, but it's a wonderful family atmosphere. And you earn your space and place in that, as we all do as we grow up in families. And so I think I was so lucky to have both of those roles, and probably not that many heads do both roles in a way, because you could go straight to headship from being pastoral deputy and DSL in charge of safeguarding. But it was at the point at which the great Mary Breen retired or moved on to her next role, but left being a headmistress from St Mary's, that the governors invited me to step up to be senior deputy. So having given my life and soul a bit actually to the pastoral life of the school, I absolutely love that. That's always been my calling. I was a pastoral head of sixth form at Headington before that. And I think because for me, it's about head and heart. I come from quite a strong academic background. I read English at Oxford, but it's about actually being able to build effective relationships. That is what makes teaching special and leading in schools really special. And so from the pastoral side of things, in full boarding, obviously, I was looking after the girls 24/7 and providing that whole world in which they live in a really caring and supportive and nurturing way, but also that had that stretch and challenge. When I became senior deputy, it was about the running of the school. It was about the really smooth running of the managing of the diary and of the organisation, because I used to love the feedback I got from parents about that, because they had a real sense of confidence in the school, because they knew what was going on and they knew who to ask if they had a question about things. So I think those two aspects of understanding how schools work, the kind of machinery of schools that I got with being a senior deputy, and the kind of hearts and minds of schools that I got with being pastoral deputy, obviously are two really important facets of being a head. But actually what I was really excited about was that sense in which you are suddenly outward looking in a whole different way as a head. And I was really ready to have that kind of shift in perspective. I love the fact that I'm building really close relationships with our feeder schools, with primary schools and with prep schools. I love the fact that we're building strong relationships with our local community. And so that's local community organisations that our girls do their community service in, but it's also our local MP, our local councillors and so on. Getting to know my neighbours really well, which is really lovely too, to be a local school. And I very deliberately chose to move to a London day school, partly because I was very excited to live in London for myself, but really because that excitement of a hub of being in a capital city and the plethora of amazing schools that are here, how do you make your school stand out? How do you find its sense of uniqueness and communicate that to parents who have more choice than anywhere in the country about whether they want to send their girls to us, single sex, and in Streatham and Clapham. And our local families have been so lovely and warm and welcoming to me in that. But quite a transition coming from boarding in leafy Ascot to moving to Streatham and Clapham.
And can you tell us a little bit about how you perceive, really, and obviously you've now been there for 6 months, the ethos and values at Streatham and Clapham and where you hope to go with this going forwards?
There's a really strong sense here that we're a family. And there's a phrase that I hear here a lot, that we're a family, not a factory school. And that sense that it's not about creating the product of a great individual that goes out to be successful in the world. It's about, as we have in our families, nurturing these young people to be the very best versions of themselves. And I felt the warmth of this school the very first time I stepped into it, when I was going through the recruitment process for headship. And I came to visit the school, and the way in which, as you move around the corridors, the girls look at you in the eye, they smile warmly, they open the doors to you. And then when I sat down with them in meetings with them, and they told me honestly, straightforwardly, frankly, things they thought they were good, things that they thought they could improve about the school, it felt somewhere where I could come and be myself. And that has felt a really important part of this journey into headship, is feeling that it was the right place for me, as well as me being right for the school. So it starting with family and relationships was fundamental for me. But in terms of ethos and values, I think one of the legacies that stayed with me very beautifully from St Mary's is that sense that we look to core values as a foundation point from which we live our lives. And I thought really carefully over the summer, moving into a secular context, which is very multi-faith and the most diverse of the schools in the DDST. Where do I find those rooted values that I feel I can really buy into and that I think are the foundation stones for a really great school? And I landed on 4, and you could probably land on all sorts of 4 that would be really effective in this. But my 4 were, probably no surprise, kindness first, and then respect, and then 2 quite tricky words, integrity and compassion. And I think that maybe being an English specialist, I'm not afraid of using dynamic and careful vocabulary. And in fact, I want girls to think about words critically and importantly. And I think talking about integrity, and I did this with the prep school girls actually only the other day, I asked them to lean forward as they were sitting on the floor in front of me in this assembly and close their eyes and look into their hearts and think, which values do they think are most important to them in terms of being a good person in the world? And they did that so beautifully and with such calmness. And I said, that's what I mean by integrity. It's not about what everyone else tells you to be. It's about the values that you hold most dearly inside of you. And I said, and some of those might be kindness and respect. And we talked a little bit more about what those might be. And I feel with compassion, there's that sense of a really active response to the people around you. And that's how you build a really warm and effective community. So it's not just being sympathetic and looking at someone who's having a tough day and go, I'm so sorry things are hard for you at the moment. Oh, tough. It's actually sitting down next to that person and asking them how you might be able to help them, listening to what that experience is. I liken it to having a burden, and that the person who has sympathy looks at that person and says, oh, well, I'm sorry you've got that load to carry. Whereas compassion is about helping share that load and actually carry that load with them. And I think that really proactive sense of allyship is absolutely fundamental then to kindness and respect that come through in the community. So I started with those values in September. I love now how I hear them reflected back to me by my colleagues, by the girls in the prep school, and that sense of shared vision that comes through in terms of what we then want as an educational ethos, I think has to be founded in feeling. And then the educational ethos is about excellence everywhere, but it is about an excellence that really focuses and nurtures the potential of the individual. And so we talk quite proudly about the fact that we're a quirky school, and that we love the fact that we are a mixture of all sorts of different strengths and capacities. And we have girls who are extremely academically able, but we have quite a wide range of academic abilities. But we look for the ways in which we value ourselves and one another along all sorts of axes and indices. So it is not just about the hard data of exam results that you get at the end of your school career that is your kind of cachet from school. That's an important part of what a girl will want to take with her, and it's a really important thing that takes her into her next stage of her educational journey. but it isn't everything. And I think we really play the long game. I'm really interested in how those girls are flourishing when they're 25 and when they're 35 and when they're thinking about their own daughter's education, decades later. Is what we have inculcated in them here at school still with them? And are the values things that they come back to, both in terms of how they learn, but really about how they live their lives? The values are core to it. And the ethos is about that sense of the stretch and challenge for the individual and recognising strength and opportunity with no invisible girls, I think is important too.
And resilience always being a key part of that. I wanted to just say, I mean, you were at St Mary's Ascot, which was obviously a primarily Catholic school, but the community at Streatham and Clapham is very diverse. Are you enjoying the inclusivity and celebration of multifaith?
I really love that. So we have 33 different nationalities and 27 different home languages. And so the girls come and expect there to be diversity in every moment as they walk around the school and the girls they're sitting next to and so on. And what I want to engender more and more is a sense of warm curiosity and interest in one another's faith and non-faith experiences. So I sit down and have lunch with the girls most days whenever I can. So I plonk my tray down on one of the tables where they are in our lovely dining hall and ask them about their morning and ask them about the school. And I always encourage them to give me feedback, to tell me what they love about the school and what they think could be improved or changed. And they've always got lots to say, which is great. But in my first week, when I was doing that back in September, I was sitting with some year 11 girls, and they said it would be really helpful if in the winter months we could have a designated prayer space for the afternoon when we have to do an afternoon prayer and get it in before we go home. So these were Muslim girls wanting to find a prayer space. And I was so pleased that they were able to ask me about that, because of course we could find that for them. And I was only too happy to facilitate it. But you need to create a culture in which young people feel they can ask, especially if it's something that hasn't been thought of or known to provide before. It taught me right from the beginning that it's what I don't know to ask about that I've got to try and find a way of uncovering. And so pupil voice has been absolutely key in that. Now, that's something that the GDST is very, very keen on as well. So our Undivided survey, which is a survey that happens across the 25 schools every year, has done for 4 years now, is particularly focused on inclusivity and a sense of belonging. And we're looking forward to getting our results from that in a couple of weeks' time. But we do lots more about that in terms of how our school council works. So we've redesigned our school council. We've got 100 girls in the school council, representatives in 4 different committees from every tutor group, so that they can be feeding back every half term on things that matter to their tutor group and their girls. And then we have a "you said, we did" assembly every half term, where we're completing that feedback loop about the things that matter to the girls. And so we'd had some reports of girls feeling that they're uncomfortable about the way their hair had been touched. And so we were able to relaunch the Halo Code as part of our uniform policy, but also to give some more gentle education around that and about respecting personal space, which some of the younger girls needed. And it was very difficult in school, as it has been in many schools, to negotiate the different places which we inhabit with regard to the war going on in Gaza at the moment. And finding an opportunity where our young people could understand the context of that conflict better, without exposing young people in a way that would be inappropriate to very sort of shocking content. So it was something that I decided I couldn't do in assembly. And so we thought of other ways in which we could do age-appropriate educational support and discussion, so that we could enable girls coming from different contexts. We have Jewish girls, we have Muslim girls, we have girls with all sorts of different affiliations within that particular conflict, and that they were able to find their voice and to seek understanding. And for those who didn't know what to think, to begin to understand and to have reliable sources of information within school that were supporting them in that. So it comes with many challenges. And I would also say that it's been a huge part of our partnership with parents in terms of working with those parents who have felt anxious about whether their child will flourish in a girls' independent school in South West London, and perhaps maybe for families from all sorts of backgrounds who themselves haven't come through independent education, how do we help to make that feel a really accessible, supportive, loving space for them? And where might we inadvertently create situations where they don't feel so comfortable? And what can we do about that? And that's come from us having focus groups and feedback groups, and then a lovely kind of EDIB working party, so equality, diversity, inclusion and belonging, that's across both our prep and senior schools. And I've been so grateful to the way in which the parents have lent into that, have given us frank, challenging, supportive advice and feedback so that we can address things accordingly. And I think you do need to be brave as a school leader. You have to be ready to face feedback that's really difficult to hear and where you don't necessarily have all the answers, and try to work humbly together with your community to understand that better. And I've found that that's been a real honour in what we've done. And we've explored not just in terms of race and ethnicity, but it's also been a really important part of exploring sexuality for young people within the school. And we've just been celebrating LGBTQIA+ History Month. And we do that by talking about really inspiring role models in our assemblies and so on, but also to make it more personal. And I'm actually going to be interviewing in front of the whole school one of my lovely colleagues here about her lived experience as a gay woman next week. So there's that sense in which we can have conversations. When I was talking to the girls earlier this week, I was talking about the way in which we think about sporting performance and outstanding sporting performance and really aiming high in that, but recognizing that there's some really interesting research now that links elite sport performance with our hormonal levels, women's hormonal levels going through the month. And so I know the doctor who works with the England women's hockey team on that. And part of what I was doing there was wanting to demonstrate to the girls that we can talk about our hormones, we can talk about our femininity and our femaleness and our physical femaleness as part of how we are as women. And I think, you know, we see that more and more in how menopause policies are coming through, and that middle-aged women like me able to talk about these things. But that's got to come from girls being able to feel that they can talk about their bodily truths as part of their whole self in school as well. So it's a very diverse experience, that's for sure. I also live locally. I live 20 minutes walk from school, so that, you know, this is my new community and I'm living and breathing it, which I'm loving.
That's fantastic. I think in the last edition we covered periods and many other things. It's definitely a driving force within the magazine to make sure that EDI is central to everything that we're embracing. So could you tell me a little bit about the main requirements and points for entry for children and families, obviously girls, let's make that very clear to the listener, thinking of applying to Streatham and Clapham, because it obviously is a 3-school right the way from nursery?
Yeah, it is. We encourage girls to start with us early because we think our provision is amazing. And so we have girls joining with us in nursery at age 3. And then we have a class of 20 for the reception year. And then we expand further in year 3. That's a really lovely cohort going through our prep school. And then, of course, our major point of entry and expansion is in the senior school, because we're on 2 different sites, for 11+. And so all of the girls who come to us at 11+ take the ISEB exam. But we also have an extension to that admissions process, which is where we invite all of the girls to come for half a day in school. And they go through a really lovely collaborative task in teams where it's based on a particular theme. And this year it was a kind of detective investigation theme. And they go through all sorts of different experiences as part of that, and creative things that they have to do and problem solving and so on. And we see them working as teams. I and my team go and observe them, but also we have other external providers who are giving us more data and feedback about what they're observing in the girls and how they interact with one another, how do they do problem solving, all sorts of aspects of that experience. So that feeds into our assessment of the girls. And then they do a piece of creative writing whilst they're with us that morning, which is based on the experience they've just had. So they've got lots of ideas buzzing around, and we can see how they write really freely in that situation. And so I have all of those different data points, plus really helpful reports coming from schools, so that we can look really genuinely at every child who's applying and understand whether we think that they would flourish with us. We then very rarely have spaces at 13+, because our girls don't leave and we're full as full. But we do tend to have some places at 16 plus. And that is a point at which some girls, maybe they've been with us for a long time, maybe they just want a different sort of school, or they're looking for an educational pathway that we're not offering in our conventional A levels. And so they go to Pastures New, and it gives us an opportunity to invite some new girls to join us at 16 plus. And that would be based on interviews and exams that they come and do with us in the autumn term of year 11, and then conditional on their GCSE results.
Obviously, being London, as you and I both know, it's increasingly transient. I imagine occasionally children suddenly are moving off to America and different things like that, or coming back from France. It's something that we deal with a lot in the consultancy. Bursary options. I've got Joe Spence talking about the bursary options at Dulwich College. What bursary options are available to families?
The GDST oversees all of the bursaries in all of our schools. And so they are obviously all means tested. And the means testing process happens centrally at the GDST. And so when a family applies for a place at the school and they want to apply for a bursary, that then gets segued to GDST to manage that bursary application. And then if they're successful in that bursary application, it could be anything from 30% to indeed 100%. And the 100% bursary would also support uniform and travel and trips and a laptop and so on. So what it really does is it is a genuinely transformational set of bursaries, very much focused on our local families here, with a really strong sense of including those families very positively into the Streatham and Clapham experience. And it's very exciting to be able to offer those to families. So very few at 100%, you'd understand, coming through each year, but then more that can make a massive difference for families at 50% or at 30%. And occasionally we're then able to add on a scholarship to that. So for a really talented musician or someone who's performed very well academically, we could add on scholarship money as well that boosts that. So it's very, very exciting, that aspect of the job. I love that.
Mm. And we understand that Streatham and Clapham, you take a very holistic approach to education. Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
That comes back to our sense of wanting to enable the young women who leave us to flourish, not just at 18 when they're going to their further education, but it is playing the long game about how they are when they're 25. And are they prepared for the world of work and for the relationships and connections that they are building in that more complex scenario, not just being ready to go off to university at 18. And so I also think that there can be a danger if one maintains a kind of rigidly academic focus, that you land your children in silos of educational experience, identifying themselves as being an extremely good mathematician and not valuing as much of the fact that they're also a brilliant trampolinist. Whereas if one can genuinely celebrate here is a sense of every girl having strengths, and that we love academic success and we love academic progress, and we love the fact as well that we have girls excelling across all sorts of different areas of their lives, but crucially not just excelling, that we have an energy in girls that they love trying things out and having all sorts of quirky opportunities to do so. So one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we have an enrichment program called Kinza. It comes from the Arabic, meaning hidden treasures. And every fortnight there is an afternoon that is committed to this across the school. And so with the senior girls, that sometimes has a more academic flavour to it, although a lot of the senior girls help support the younger girls in their activities that they're doing. For year 11, we have a PSHE programme and a community service programme that happens at that time. So they're going out to all sorts of local organisations and charities and supporting them in that way. But the girls otherwise get to do it across year groups, all sorts of different things, from horse riding to bouldering to jewellery making to skateboarding to script writing and filmmaking, circus skills, all sorts of things. And some parents asked me recently, well, what's the academic value of that? Wouldn't they be better off in lessons? And I would say this is an indicator of a true commitment to holistic learning, because actually what you're doing then is learning the skills of getting on with other people, of maybe teaching somebody else to do something, which is such a good way of learning for yourself. And crucially doing it with girls of different year groups. And so a little year 7 girl might be able to give a year 10 girl some really good advice about how they might ride their horse better, or the skateboarding and so on. In fact, and that's what I watched happening the other day. And it's that sense of problem solving and resilience and learning something new and unfamiliar that you haven't done before, and keeping trying new things right the way up the school. Because otherwise, that experience of learning something new, and my goodness, I should know that as a new head, is really daunting. But if we're going to be successful in life, we have to keep practicing doing things that we're not very good at, and not minding that, and actually it being low stakes and being fun, but being able to be ourselves in that. And so the holistic education is about preparing girls for work and the workplace. So it's about the technology and the innovation and the skills that go with that, whether that's presentation skills, whether that's IT and literacy skills, whether that's thinking really creatively about the positive sides of AI, as well as the negative ones as well. But it's about crucially interpersonal skills as well, and being prepared in terms of careers and their future aspirations. And I'm really proud of the programme that we have that puts together their CVs. They put together their CVs. They have lots and lots of interview practice from year 10, but they've started that careers obviously in year 7. So we want the girls to be ready for university or whatever else they choose to do at 18. But it feels like it's so much more than that conventional academic offering that we would hope that parents could really enjoy here. It's also about the co-curricular. So a wonderful music department, a really ambitious and competitive sporting department, but that is very open to all as well. We have our F teams and we're very proud of them. I read out their results in assembly too. And then the arts, which you see all around the school here when you come and visit, and design and technology integrating with our IT. And that's where we're growing robotics. It's where we've got green screens coming in for developing videography. And we also have GCSE engineering here at Streatham and Clapham. And so really committing to girls adventuring in STEM within the science curriculum, but beyond it as well, feels important.
I think that's fantastic. I think that exams or no exams, being able to survive when they leave school is the biggest lesson of all. You've mentioned that your son had dyslexia. My son was dyslexic also, and ADHD. I mean, obviously you're now ahead, but you've worked your way up. How do you feel that that experience has impacted the work you now do as a head, a teacher, from having a personal experience yourself of a neurodiverse child?
Yeah, it's been hugely instructive. I have experienced the guilt and the shame that I think parents sometimes feel where they haven't recognised what's happening with their child. They haven't known how to respond to it. And you'd think I might do as an English teacher who actually has taught special needs at some points in her time and so on. But actually knowing what to do for your own child and for the best for them, and feeling like you're failing in that is so devastating as a parent. So I think that compassion for parents is something that I have learnt on a fairly tough journey myself. I think he was very unhappy at school and sometimes school refused. And so I've lived that journey too, which I think can be really, really hard. But I've also understood how magical his brain is. You know, it's not past tense for him. He very much owns the fact that he's dyslexic and has ADHD now. In fact, his ADHD diagnosis was quite recent. He's at university now. And I could see that there were certain things that he was amazing at, able to, even when he was really young. So when he used to draw pictures, he loved all sorts of vehicles and particularly trains, but he would draw trains and vehicles half on and half off the page, you know, half of a train coming onto the page. And so I knew he understood frames and the idea of framing a reality and storytelling. And I knew he loved stories, even though he found reading really hard work. And when I understood that it was probably 150% of the effort for him to read compared to sort of 70% for the rest of us, that's where audiobooks were our saving grace. And he still adores audiobooks. And so he can talk to you with the most extraordinary encyclopedic knowledge about Harry Potter, about Lord of the Rings and so on, because he has imbibed those worlds in a lovely, creative and really fulfilling way. And he can tell great stories. It's why he's now studying video game design. That has been his great métier. And so I think when you see a child struggle, when you see a child maybe not fulfilling the potential you thought they had in terms of academic outcomes and exam grades, and I'd certainly say that he would say that that was true about him, to see all the stuff that is wonderful about them and to realise that when they are pushing back, it's not personal. but there is something really uncomfortable for them in the educational space that they may be forced to inhabit, we can lean into that as parents. And we are so much better now, even than we were 5 years ago, at understanding what that means as professionals and understanding what kind of adaptations we should be making in the classroom, because teachers just didn't do that for him in the same way as I know we do here and we talk about every week here in school. And that's adaptations for young people of all abilities, but it's making sure that you're really firing them up. And now he's doing something he loves and that he's really good at. He's incredibly fired up. And so I think the importance, it's shown to be even more the importance of finding something that a child loves and is good at. And it doesn't matter what it is, as long as they feel that you're proud of them in the achievement that they're making there. Because there's, especially for a child who's neurodiverse, there may be all sorts of things that they're receiving messages and feedback all the time that they're not very good at. So where are we making them feel fantastic about themselves? So I understand that in such a visceral way that I am passionate about it within the school and in what I require of my teachers to do in terms of making the appropriate adaptations for our children here. I know how important it is for us to pick up the phone to parents and to be talking to parents about how their children are getting on. I also know that those diagnoses of neurodiversity don't just come when children are young, and particularly girls are very good at masking some aspects of those. And so for us to be really open and alert to those diagnoses when they're older, it is really important. It's quite a journey, but an instructive one.
And at Streatham and Clapham, obviously, increasingly now, more and more children have ed psych reports, but certainly you would consider yourself as a school to be neurodiverse and fully inclusive.
Absolutely, we would. But what I would say is an educational psychologist report is obviously a really important piece of data that we would look at. But also you have to look at where a child is as they're presented in front of you, and also that their profile and experience changes as they grow. And so we want all of that information from parents and girls when they join the school, and then we take stock and see how that child flourishes with us in our context. We understand that the labelling is useful and helpful, and I've been very open about using that about my son, but equally one needs to make sure that actually that doesn't again become a restrictive element of how a child perceives themselves or how other people perceive the potential of that child. And so it's looking at the child in front of us and being really dynamic about the sorts of support and adaptations that that child might need in order to really flourish. And if we are always thinking critically and assertively in that way, that is about the neurodiverse child. But the thing is that lots and lots of teaching adjustments that we make are the best teaching adjustments for all children. And so it's thinking about that really supportive provision for all children, including the sort of extension that you might give very able children as well. And obviously, I hope I'm not suggesting that neurodiverse aren't able. Some of our absolutely most able children are the neurodiverse children. But I think another part of being neurodiverse is the social side of things, and particularly with the autistic spectrum disorder diagnosis, which again is something that has really developed in understanding for young women in the last 5 years or so. It was very rarely diagnosed in girls before about 5 years ago, and now it is readily diagnosed and much better recognised and understood. And that's where we are a school where sometimes we make sure that there are quiet times, and we always make sure that there are quiet spaces. That big bustly schools aren't just for extroverts, and they aren't just for the girls that want to be in kind of noisy bustly places. That there is time for reflection, that there are places for peace and calm, and that whoever that child is, they can feel safe in our space. And I think that's one of the loveliest things I've had in terms of feedback, is how our neurodiverse children and young people do feel safe here and understood. And that's very powerful in a pretty big school.
The main area of focus for our magazine, as I think we've discussed now quite a bit, but also obviously it's rather relevant at many schools, including Streatham and Clapham, but equality, diversity and inclusion. And on your school website, it says social justice will be even more of a golden thread that runs through our work in the coming months and years. Would you like just to explain that statement?
Well, I think it comes from the core values that I mentioned earlier. And so kindness, respect, integrity, and compassion. If we are truly going to show these, we show these within our community of the school, but in our commitment to our local community here, but also as global citizens. And I feel it's so important that in an age-appropriate way, we engage young women thoughtfully in understanding the challenges that face us as a society and community going forward. So sustainability is a really key focus of us as a school, and that's about how we do things here in school differently in order to ensure that we are sustainable as an organisation. We talk to the girls about things like our energy choices and energy bills. We have a big poster up in our dining hall where we record how much waste is thrown out every week from our food waste, so that girls can be really thoughtful about how much food they put on their plates and so on. And we have our eco warriors in the school who go around turning off all the lights. And we've had to put stickers on the sockets to make sure they don't turn off the things that really shouldn't be turned off because they're so vehement about it. But I love the fact that there is social change and social responsibility in the daily lived experience of the girls here. And that's something we're really trying to engender. It comes through working in the local community, as I've described, with our community service programme, and that's working with the elderly, it's working in local state primary schools, and it's working with homeless organisations and supporting food banks and so on. And that's the girls actually going and doing the work in those organisations, as well as raising money and doing fundraising and awareness raising for that as well. But we do have a kind of global vision for this. And so we are partnering with schools in Kenya, in Nepal, in the Congo, where it's about educational exchange. And whenever you have these kind of educational partnerships with the maintained sector here locally and then internationally, it must be with the spirit of mutuality. And so a really open sense of what we learn from one another and the richness that we experience through connecting with one another. And so we've got projects going on with World Book Day and the kind of international exchanges with books and reading and the joy of reading, and similarly with our International Women's Day as well. And so using partnerships that are forged very genuinely through staff who've got some kind of connection or know someone somehow in a school somewhere else in the world, and where we can become kind of partner schools with them. And it's when the girls can do that amazing kind of Zoom connection and talk about their lives and share their experiences with learners from a completely different context. That's when their eyes are opened. And then it's looking in the long term about how we develop more sustained community service internationally, and that's something that's on our development plan going forward. So not the kind of eco-tourism, but actually meaningfully going in and supporting long-term projects abroad that the girls can feel that they've been really invested in. But I think it needs to be a muscle, and it's something that is stretched and practiced and developed every day, every week. And so I make quite a point of talking to the girls in my assemblies about current affairs issues that I think that they should be aware of. So we've talked about the rights of women in Iran, for example, and that sense of being aware of social justice in terms of being able to vote, and the fact that this year is a great year of democracy with 70 countries going to the ballot box and 2 million people being able to vote. Why must women take up that vote and be part of that democratic process too? So I hope it isn't just stuff we say. It's so importantly about the stuff we do.
Fantastic. Last couple of questions. You are part of the bigger group, the bigger umbrella, the GDST, and it's the Girls' Day School Trust, for anyone who doesn't know. I mean, you've been there for 6 months now, but what do you feel are the benefits of being part of a bigger group in that way? And also, obviously, the importance of single-sex education and girls' education kind of it's a big umbrella, isn't it?
At the GDST, we think of ourselves as a really big family. So 25 schools, 19,000 pupils, and I think over 70,000 alumni. So there's this extraordinary network of connection. And it's really interesting to me that whenever I connect with prospective parents or prospective staff who are looking to work at the school, they will always mention when they've got a GDST connection. And that includes men coming and looking for work here, and they'll talk about their mothers coming to a GDST school or their sister going to a GDST school. Those who know about it know how very special it is. So I feel so proud to be part of it because it was set up by these amazing 4 pioneering suffragists 150 years ago, and they were so determined in a kind of gorgeous fearlessness that women's education, girls' education had to be at the forefront of women moving forward in society. And our lovely motto here at Streatham and Clapham is towards wisdom unafraid. And so picking up on that fearlessness, I think it is really wonderful. In terms of the kind of practical support that we have, for me, it feels like a bit of a sisterhood. Actually, there are lots of men who are wonderful who work there too, but there's a real sense of how together we are so invested in what is wonderful for girls and for young women. And so the 25 heads, we meet very regularly, we do training together. I've got a mentor within that group, but I always know that I can ask stupid questions and feel supported by that. It does also mean that centrally we're extremely well resourced in terms of running our schools as businesses. And as a head, I have to be really aware of that and thoughtful about that. And that's in terms of finance and compliance and HR and so on, that's brilliantly supported. And it does give us a very wonderful security in a way that a standalone school just can't enjoy, especially at the moment when we are faced with those very interesting times politically and the very real possibility of VAT on fees, for example, and the loss of business rates. That is going to have an impact on schools, and it's about us going through some tricky weather as a sector. But the independent sector's gone through tricky weather before, tricky times before, but we do feel that we're stronger together and that we're able to feed off each other's good ideas. And of course, we feed off each other's good ideas all the time because our heads of department meet in area specialism. So our heads of English will meet, our heads of science will meet and so on. And they'll be collaborating and sharing great ideas. But also we have this brilliant scheme of competitions across the trust, whether that's sport or creative writing or public speaking and so on, so that the girls are competing at a much bigger level than just their school level. And it really means something to them to succeed at that level.
And your vision for the future for Streatham and Clapham, I think you've given us a very clear picture, really. But is there anything in particular that you'd like to mention?
I suppose a real sense that if that holistic strength of the school is truly realised, that in its time we become the kind of no-brainer school for local families who've got girls and they're thinking, I want all girls independent education for my girl. I want somewhere that's going to be energised and ambitious and see her for who she is. And they'll go, well, of course, Streatham and Clapham. I understand that parents want different things for their children and they come to it with their own set of experiences of school themselves and aspirations for their children. But as a mother, I know what I wanted is that whatever I did muddling through parentdom with them as children, that what I would end up with is really happy, interested and interesting, independent young people who understood emotional regulation, who understood that things are complex and that it's about shades of nuance, that there aren't simple pat answers, who were critical in their thinking skills. But I would really say, and I'm really glad I'm going to end here, it's about friendship. And I think the friends that all girls develop in all girls schools beat any other friendships. I saw that at St Mary's and I saw that at Hennington and I see it here. The most amazing friendships that really do last for life. And I feel very lucky to be part of that journey, observing that with our girls. They love the fact that in an all-girls school, every subject is a girls' subject, that all the sports are girls' sports, whether that's football or cricket or hockey or trampolining or gymnastics. And that we can tailor the interest and the curriculum of what we do to things that we know that really light girls up and ignite them. But fundamentally, I come back to the fact it's about the relationships and about the friendships. And this is a school that historically has grown amazing friendships. And I hope that's what we'll continue to do.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about the school. I must pop by and come and see it in person with you now, leading the ship. But thank you very much for sharing so much information about Streatham and Clapham. And we hope that you enjoyed the rest of the year.
Thank you.